It's Sunday and I have 28 pairs to get through. The dollar just got strength from the NFP, and this week we have FOMC, PCE and CPI. These three data could flip everything I'm about to say in this video. So I'm not giving you predictions. I'm giving you the monthly, the weekly, the daily, and showing you exactly what I see. Strategy by strategy, pair by pair. So without further ado, let's get into it. So before we start, let's look at the fundamental stance of the market currently before we start to look into the charts and see what's the possible direction and is it aligned with the fundamental situation of the market. So currently, what we have overall when it comes to every single news release, we have the Japanese yen being the strongest, followed by the British pound and then the euro. However, the rest of them are all in the neutral stance. Well, but in the last 14 days, we have the New Zealand dollar totally abysmal. This is literally 0% right here. As you can see, in the last 14 days, it has nothing to offer. The best performing in the last 14 days is the Japanese yen at 74.86%. That is quite bullish in my opinion, quite bullish. The rest of them are closer to the neutral, except for the British pound, which is about 65%, and the CAD, which is about 62% strong. We also have the US dollar, which is quite okay, like really good in my opinion. Now, the key news, these are just the main top news, the CPI, the PCE, inflation data, the non-farm payrolls and other stuff. Just the main key data. We have the strongest economy still, the British pound, followed by the euro and then the US dollar. The worst performing in this case is the Canadian dollar, followed by the Australian dollar and then the Swiss franc. The rest of them are neutral. Now, one thing is quite clear here if you are looking at this entire chart is that the British pound seems to be performing well all round compared to any other currency on this table. You can clearly see it here when I select on the British pound. It's green across board, very green across board. The rest of them have like some sort of deviations, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. But if you say, to my opinion, the next best thing after the British pound is actually the US dollar, followed by the Japanese yen. So to me, these are the three best performing things right now, looking at all the overall, the 14 days, and then the key news. The worst performing right now is the New Zealand dollar alongside the Australian dollar. These are the two currencies I would say are literally dropping the ball currently. Now, taking a look at the pairs, let's start with the majors. Now, alongside the majors, we have the same scenario. We have the overall, the 14 days, and the key news comparison. So on the overall, we see that the best performing is the British pound, followed by the euro against the US dollar. However, on the worst performing pair is the US dollar against the Japanese yen. In the last 14 days, the fundamental changes shows that the New Zealand dollar is the worst performing pair, followed by the Australian dollar. And the best performing pair is the US dollar Swiss franc. When I say best performing, I mean bullish, strength, strong, right? Something that may most likely have a chart. May not have the chart going up. We're just saying that the fundamental news release is saying this pair is bullish. Or rather, the news is comparison is saying this is a bullish pair to stay in. While on the key economic data releases, we have the US dollar against the Canadian dollar having the best records, and also the US dollar against the Swiss franc, while the Australian dollar against US dollar having the worst rank. Now take note, this does not mean that you open the chart and you will most likely see a bearish chart. The fundamental and technical stance can be absolutely opposite, but one thing I know for certain is if the fundamentals is saying one thing and the technical chart is doing the exact opposite, when it's going to fall in line with the fundamental, it is going to be very rapid. That is something I've come to observe a lot of times in the market. Now let's take a look at the minor pairs. The minor pairs are the minor currencies. In terms of the overall news comparison, they are not really far from each other. Just the British pound against the Australian dollar falling into the positive side. Now, what I see as positive is 60% and above. What I see as negative, basically bearish, is 40% and below. So for the lower ones, we have the CAD Japanese yen, the Swiss franc Japanese yen, the Australian dollar Japanese yen, as well as the New Zealand Japanese yen. When it comes to the recent 14 days, we have the best performing pairs. Clearly, I don't even need to call them out. You can see them: Australian, New Zealand, everything against the New Zealand. Basically, they are all against the New Zealand dollar, and the worst performing is all against the New Zealand dollar. That is in the recent 14 days. Mind you, again, these are economic data releases. And then the key comparison news, that is the key news. When you compare the key news, the best performing pair you can see right here is the British pound against the Canadian dollar, followed by the euro against the US, the Canadian dollar. We also have things like the euro against the Australian dollar. Matter of fact, there are actually many this time. There are many this time on this edge. We have the British pound against the Australian dollar. We also have the British pound against the Swiss franc. We have the New Zealand against the CAD and the euro against the Swiss franc. Now, this is a lot of pairs to look at and say you want to go bullish on them. But I'm not saying go bullish on any pair here. Don't forget, this is not financial advice. This is me just sharing my opinions on the market and then showing you the results of my own calculations. Now, when it comes to the worst performing pair, we have the Canadian dollar against the Japanese yen. Matter of fact, anything below the 40% mark. You can see we have 40% here. We have lots and lots. Just only these two basically are the bad performing, or rather negative moving pairs. Basically, you should be shorting these markets. Now, let's move on to something else, right? With all of this knowledge at the back of our head, it means we're still going to have to look at the chart and then decide what directions to take. So let's look at the chart. So here we're going to start by reading the charts according to the monthly, the weekly, and the daily. This is by far the best way we can actually look through all 28 pairs in as short time as possible without going way too in-depth into deep dive. Deep dive could be given during the week. So if you want to see deep dive, do well to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you get notified when I release new videos. Let's look at this now. One thing you would notice here, zooming into the first thing on the monthly, Australian dollar against the US dollar, we see price actually, we see that we had price run above this high, which was the previous week's high before. I'm going to apply default here. We can see that price ran above it, but price not only ran above it, price came down below it. Now we're looking at last month and this month. This month just recently started. We only had about a day or two in the month to trade. But what happened next was at the end of the month, we seem to have wicked both ways, the top and the bottom, but we closed far more closer to the bottom of the entire range of February in the month of March. And with April starting, April is most likely going to be pulling downwards, or rather to the downside. Allow me to turn on a particular tool that I can use to annotate the video very faster. So we expect a more downwards trend when it comes to the monthly on this market, right? On the Australian dollar against the US dollar. Now, this doesn't mean we should just go into the month and start looking for sell, everything sell. No. Why do we take account of this? You also notice that there is a bullish imbalance right here. And one thing we have noticed with bullish imbalance is price may, now this is not certainty, price may find a way to reverse in such an environment, or even find its way down to the demand zone, which is usually below bullish imbalances. It may find its way down to the demand zone and find strength. However, this is where we start to agree that the monthly is becoming bearish, because right now the monthly is not really bearish. The monthly is just signaling downside. It's not bearish. Where we will start to say it's bearish, well, personally I would say start to go bearish, is when we start to break below this demand zone, which is the 0.64 range. So once price starts to go below those range, we are definitely looking for more selling opportunities than any other thing. So heading into the weekly with all this knowledge in mind, what do we see on the weekly? Well, on the weekly, we have price rejecting to move to the upside. Not just price, a lot of buyers, sellers pushing more than the buyers are pushing the market. Then hence, we're having lower prices, meaning people are far more interested in shorting the Australian dollar against the US dollar currently than they were they have been for a long time. All of these times they were bullish. Right now they seem to be much more bearish and, you know, going hard about it. Again, we'll go back to our comparison board, look at it. You can see again the fundamental is pointing out that the Australian dollar against the US dollar has a tendency, or rather more tendency, to keep releasing news where it's not so good for the Australian dollar compared to the US dollar. Now, it doesn't mean they don't have good news. It means when you compare their good news to the good news coming out from the US dollar, from the US economy, it's not so catchy, right? Now, with all of this in mind, there's a high tendency for push downwards. Mind you, I like to always label my stuffs with the notation. So these are monthly FAGs, monthly demand zones. Now, what do we have here? Just like the last time, we see price pushing downwards. And one thing that we are looking at right here is the last week was quite funny. We had price really try to go up and failed. So what do we expect? Price may come down to these areas of bullish, of weekly demand. Now on the weekly, it is where it gets tricky, right? On the weekly, this is where it gets tricky. We may be expecting price to break this demand zone, but the first thing first, right? It's price is going to have to mitigate the demand zone. That is the first thing that's going to happen. I'm going to have to pull this to the downside so I can utilize the entire screen. Yeah, that makes sense. So we expect price to first come into this weekly demand zone. Most likely going to come into this weekly demand zone. Again, there is a weekly zone here. In my last video, I kind of debunked why the weekly imbalance is not important, but I'll still do it again in this video. So if we put up a weekly imbalance structure here, this is the bullish imbalance, the weekly bullish imbalance, right? And we say we want to use this weekly. Now, the strategy is when you have a weekly imbalance, you should go down to the 4 hours to look for sharp turns, or the 1 hour to look for order flow into the bullish side, right? On one condition, if the fair value gap has not been mitigated at all prior, but I don't even need to zoom in much. I'm just going to shift this one away for a while. You can see that the exact next week we had price coming into the fair value gap. Basically, we had price coming into the area. You can see it right there. So the weekly, for me, that weekly FEG, or rather weekly imbalance, or whatever you want to call it, is not functional. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Now let's go back into the daily. The daily. Now this is where a different thing starts to form up, right? A different thing. It was a different thing here. We have expectations of the monthly and the weekly telling us most likely going to keep going down. However, we have fundamental telling us similar situation right here. However, one last problem, right? One last problem. There's something called sharp turn. Sharp turn means we see price starts to, when price creates a fair value gap on the higher time frame, comes down, it's going to be creating imbalances as it comes down, right? And then what happens next is that when it comes into the higher time frame imbalance, we suddenly see it start to negate the already existing situation, right? We start to see some things like this, and then we would know that the market is, that's like change of character, basically change of character, change of structure, choose, whatever it is. That starts to happen around here, and we will say price is most likely going back for the upside. And what I can see here is a deliberate, like, it's not really deliberate, but it's a clear show of that situation happening already. So what we have here is a bearish imbalance leading into pushing price into the monthly imbalance, right? We have a high daily imbalance, but immediately after that we have a high daily bullish imbalance again. Now, what does this mean? It means we have witnessed everything we need to see on the daily to say price is most likely going to start going back to the upside. In the words of Shapton of IO, we expect price to move up. And why do we say we expect price to even move up? Not just because we saw a fair value gap, but also because the candle that came back to walk into this fair value gap, right, into this imbalance, literally showed price come downwards. Now, I'm just going to explain this for the first one. In the rest of the video, if I see such a situation, it will be easier to understand. But what we can see right here is, you can see that this candle immediately after the imbalance, it came in and went out immediately. Price came into that zone and went out almost immediately. Not looking at the last day's price right now, but looking at the price of on Thursday, the 2nd of April. You can see how I'm looking at this particular candle right here, like this one right here. So you can see how price moved. Price came down into the FEG and went back up. So that alone is an indication that there is a high tendency that price may start to move upwards. However, the fundamental situation is not supporting it. What would make this change is if we start seeing terrible news on the US dollar end or extremely good news on the Australian dollar end, where the Australian dollar starts to gain strength. I won't be able to go too far down. Let's just go into the 4 hours and see what's happening. Now, on the 4 hours, what do we see here? We can see clearly that from the daily situation, we had price push in and suddenly push out. However, one big problem, right? This is the big problem here. Even on the daily, I'll go with this time frame, then I'll go back to the daily. So even on the daily, we see price struggling to locate this price level. That is a 0.69403. Price is struggling to locate this level. Even after respecting the 4 hours situation, it's still pushing downwards to the downside. So what does this mean? We have a situation where price could go below this particular zone to meet up with this lower demand. This is a demand already, which price has already met with. You can see price has already met with this demand here, but price could find its way below the zone. And by the time I see price, for me personally, I don't think I'll be trading anything yet here, unless I see like a very clear reason to. But if price should print its way below the zone, right, I know I am looking for much more selling opportunities than I am looking for buying opportunities. What zone am I talking about? Well, it is this price range right here. So this price range right here, the 0.68 range, 0.68 from 0.683 to 0.685. That range, should I see price find its way below the zone, there is a higher tendency for selling to continue occurring until price makes its way to the 0.76 range before it starts to find any iota of strength. But it all depends again on the news released at the end of during the week. This is for the Australian dollar. You can see how big deep dive it is. Now, another thing I'm also looking out for is my Quasimodo levels. Now, if you go into the 4 hours, what I see here is I can't see a Quasimodo level. Quasimodo level is basically Choch, a more advanced form of Choch, the change of character of the market. Now, at the points where price is supposed to change character, I'm not seeing any clear show of possible change here. Not even on the 1 hour, I'm not seeing any clear show of it. The show it had is not so clear. I have this, this is the lowest point, then I had this. So this is a good Quasimodo level. However, if I should pull out a POI from this area, This is a good Quasimodo level. This is a good one, quite good. However, I would love to see price show strength. Personally, I would love to see price show strength. Show strength by breaking above this level, going forward to break above these levels. So this basically breaking above the 0.696 levels, entering into the 0.697s. Then I can say I want to come into this market. I want to be a buyer. I want to be a buyer for stop loss just below the zone and take profits anywhere above. You know, I could be aiming for anywhere from the 0.72s to the 0.729, which is basically 0.773. But until then, I can't take any trade here. This is all for the Australian dollar against the US dollar. Moving on, the next major we have in the market, we have the euro against the US dollar. Now, from the fundamental records we have here, we see that the euro is about 55% neutral on the overall news. By 14 days comparison, it is at the 34.3 mark, which is bearish. Actually, it's below the 40%. On the recent 40 days, it's more of a bearish market. And then we have the key comparison market, which is also 38.9%. Oh, sorry, I think there's a mistake somewhere. I need to clear it up. Yeah, okay. Yeah, there was a mistake somewhere. So on the overall, it is actually neutral, 55.5.7. On the 14 days, it is going towards the bearish end, and on the key news, it is quite neutral. So in my opinion, right, the euro against the US dollar is quite neutral by fundamental stance. It can swing in that way technically. So let's go into the technical chart and see what that is all about. I'm actually in the trade in this market. I'm just hiding my trades, current trades. I'm shorting this market, but let's just look at it on the monthly. We start with the monthly, and we have a similar scenario with that of the Australian dollar. However, one thing you notice here for a start is that first thing I always observe is what last impulsive move, or rather what last strong move did we see on the chart. And you can see right here we have 2 consecutive zones of bullish imbalance right here, saying that there was not too long ago there was some massive strength buying in the euro against the US dollar. I think everybody remembers this period very well. I believe, but I don't know if they do. However, what we're saying now is price is beginning to show a bit of weakness, with a tendency to come down towards the 1.1 areas and 1.09 areas. Now, what was the last move we found when it comes to the euro against the US dollar is we found a major loss of power at the 1.7 levels, 1.17 levels, and price fell into the 1.6 levels, 1.16 levels, and it is showing more signs of continuation. Matter of fact, you can see that the last stronghold here, which was the 1.146 levels, we've seen price literally poke through it and return upwards a little bit, but seems like at the beginning of this month we are beginning to see that price may even push further to the downside. Now, heading with all of that in your mind into the weekly, what do we see here is exactly similar scenario what I just said. We have an imbalance that just got completely invalidated. You can see this is the bullish imbalance, and everything that has to do with it, the zone, the demand zone alongside with it, everything has gotten absolutely invalidated. And now price is looking for more selling pressure. As you can see, price tried pushing upwards 4 times in a row. It's tried it the first time, got rejected, tried again, still got rejected, tried again, got rejected, and last week it tried again, only to get more rejection. So in my opinion, this is already a bearish market. This is literally a bearish market. It's already losing weekly strength. Lost the first one, literally lost the second one already. There is basically almost no hope for it. The next places we're looking at are levels like the 1.139s and the 1. These are the 1.10 levels, which price may don't forget that's the keyword, may abruptly run down to. Heading in down to the daily, what we have here is you can see price bouncing around this zone. Price is finding its way, still fighting on trying to escape this area of price movement. We have that is between the 1.161 and the 1.45 levels, but there's a higher tendency right now. There's a higher tendency for price to just break below, or it may even come towards this edge and then push back up again for another form of consolidation before it either finds its way to the downside or it finds its way to the upside. We cannot tell, right? We're just following price, understanding what direction is likely to go. Now, I want to add on the screen right here a table to track this entire metric here. So I'm going to use a notepad right here on the screen. I'm going to put up a table. We're going to say first and foremost markets, and then fundamental direction. So and then technical direction, or rather technical direction. So for the Australian dollar, US dollar, we decided the fundamental said bearish, which is not so nice, and the technical is saying bearish. We have the US euro against US dollar, which is quite neutral fundamentally, but the chart is saying bearish. And as you can see, it was saying neutral before, and it's actually kind of correct. Why? Because you can see price is literally bouncing around the zone, around that area. So moving on, we have the British pound against the US dollar. Now I'm going to be a bit faster because you've already beginning. I think in the last two markets, you've understood exactly how I'm looking at the chart very quick. So I may be a bit faster now because I believe you followed and you understood all the way to that point, and you'll be able to easily read the charts the way I read the chart. So let's move into the monthly. Now on the monthly, we have quite similar scenario. However, we have first and foremost an invalidated imbalance, bullish imbalance. All right, not really invalidated, but utilized. That's the right word. It has been utilized right here. But we also have, we don't even have any other more left. So price has every opportunity to push downwards. But on the monthly, we may most likely be aiming for this low right here. So let's just put this as a golden target for the monthly M. So on the monthly, we're aiming for the golden target of 1.30. On the weekly, what do we see price doing to us? Well, we see price, markets lost this level right here. They lost this area of price. Allow me to die a little bit faster. So market lost the 1.334 levels, and we're seeing similar situations, major rejections at this point. If we are seeing major rejections at those points, oh sorry, I kind of skipped it. If we're seeing major rejections at this point of price, that is the 1.345s to the 1.335s, we're seeing major rejections at those points, then we most likely would say if we find price coming into these areas again, there's a higher tendency to sell the market, right? There's a higher tendency to sell. Hence, as you can see, the monthly, or rather the weekly, has a target, which is right here, right? The weekly has a target of around the 1.30s too. So there's a major show that price targets is to the downside for now. There's no demand zone. There's no clear demand zone. The only demand zone we ought to have had here is not so clear. Why do I say it's not so clear? It is extremely broad, not clear, and we see price literally dangling into it already with a higher tendency to pull downwards. Now let's see what the fundamental is saying. The fundamental for the euro against the US dollar is, I think I'm just gonna leave it like this. So the British pound against the US dollar, we have overall comparison saying bullish. We have the 14 days comparison saying, well, kind of neutral. Actually, this is neutral, close to being bullish. This is also neutral. The key data saying most likely neutral, and we can see all of that situation happening in this 4 weeks or 3 weeks time frame here. It could fall in either direction. It could fall in either direction, but from what I'm seeing here, I'm seeing a clear show of lower lows, lower highs. Price seems like it's bottoming out, giving us a bearish. You see, it's like a bearish trend line. The trend line to the downside. That's basically what we can see right here. Trend line to the downside. So there's a high tendency, if we see price coming back up a little bit, it may even push even further till it heads to the downside. And this is it. That's the target for the British pound against the US dollar. So let's see the British pound against the US dollar. Even though the fundamental is quite neutral, we have more bearish stance. One thing is quite clear here. The US dollar seems to have more strength than all the things we've seen. But let's keep looking and seeing if we have something better. Okay, for the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar, we have price pushing more for the downside. You can see the recent 3 candles are screaming more bearish situation. We have price heading directly for first and foremost 0.0575 level on the monthly. So you can see that is the monthly targets. On the weekly, we have very similar situations. Matter of fact, price ended with aggressive selling potentials compared to every other time. Well, I personally feel the daily could start with a little bit of upside before it literally capitulates. And as you can see, the weekly targets is exactly same with the monthly view. On the daily, what do we see? We see price ending with extreme bearish nature. Extreme bearish nature. I don't even need to say anything on this chart. Basically, you can see it clearly. We don't even need to draw markings or lines or anything. The only thing you need to put on this chart is maybe you want to enter. If you see price come back to this area, which is this is about the 0.777 to 0.730 levels, you should hope for selling opportunities. Now, like I said, I'm not going to go deeper into lower time frames. Right, I'm not going to go deeper into lower time frames, and this is literally dependent on what news release we get during the week. Right, it's literally dependent on what news release we get during the week. But if you look at it here, you can see that the overall is 50%. The 14 days, in the recent 14 days, I think the New Zealand dollars news release has been terrible. And then in the key news, now the last 14 days, the news they released were not key news, or were most likely not key news, but the ones that came out were terrible. And then the key comparison news are neutral. And that puts us in this position where we are most likely going to quickly run to the downside on the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar, most likely. For the US dollar against the Canadian dollar, let's remember to put that here. NZDUSD, clearly bearish, or slightly, actually this one is slightly bearish for the first time, but the technical chart is screaming very bearish. So on the US dollar against the CAD, we have the fundamental information saying, well, this is where we have the first diverging news, right? The overall comparison is quite neutral. Matter of fact, it's very neutral. The recent 14 days news release is very neutral. However, the key news releases are it's all in a bullish angle. More support for the US dollar than any other thing. And what does this relate to us on the chart? Now on the monthly, we are currently falling into a monthly supply area. So this is more like a monthly resistance. It doesn't mean you will. We may find kind of price movement troubles inside the monthly here in this range. Moving on to the targets is still the bearish end. That is the monthly target. I think I'll start putting up monthly targets on the chart. Now on the weekly, what do we have? We see price breaking above a clear weekly supply area. And I'm just gonna have to shift this a little bit for you guys to see it, but allow me touch this guy a little bit. So you can see price closed above it, well above it. So we have a higher tendency of price making its way to these 1.4139 levels. There's a higher tendency for price to make its way to those levels, but it doesn't mean price is suddenly just going to jump right there, right? Price we could possibly see price do a little bit of pullback before it runs up, or it could just run up. You can't tell, right? We can't tell. We're just going to trade what we see on price, what we see price doing during the week. So this is, you can see, coming from a strong weekly demand zone. It's pushing off. It created the weekly demand zone to push off and break above the weekly supply zone. So on the daily, there's only one thing, right? There's only one thing. Even if you pull out the entire range, right? The entire range of this market right here, we have much more belief that if price should even see a pullback, there's a higher tendency for it to pull up and run away from this area. So what do we see here? We see a bullish market. We see a very, 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 very bullish market literally coming up, just as the fundamental predicted. This has a very bullish sign for the week. The next thing we have on the chart is the US dollar Swiss franc. Let's see what it has for us fundamentally. Fundamentally, it's leaning more to the bullish side, in my opinion. You can see the overall comparison says neutral, but in the recent 14 days, the news is going towards the bullish edge, while also the key comparison news are going towards the bullish edge. So basically, we have a bullish stance on the fundamental aspect, but on the technical aspect, what do we see? Let's head towards that direction and see what we're looking for. Okay, so what we have here is price running towards the first area of supply, the monthly. Basically, this is also going to be the weekly targets from what I'm seeing already, and I'll show you exactly why. So you have price heading towards the 0.8123 levels, and price is doing so by running strongly off a monthly zone. It's created a monthly demand zone right here. Creating it, does not created it yet, it's creating it. The third candle is going to be like a decision situation. So if the month ends up positive, it may end up positive, breaking above, it could end up positive a little bit below, or finally come back here, and that will no longer be a monthly zone. But on the weekly, what do we see? We see price finding struggles, right? Finding struggles to go through the weekly supply area. Compared to the US dollar against the CAD counterpart, it is finding a little bit of difficulty going above it, because the wick kind of went in, came down, came back in, and it's not pushing clearly away from it. And even on the we don't have like weekly strong zone. We just know that price ran away from this strong area of battle on the weekly. You can see it ran away from these areas. That's what you can see right here. So you see the third candle didn't create an imbalance, so there's a high tendency this may not stand. This may have price retrace to look for more strength, and then the fundamental news could come in and push it upwards, possibly. It all depends on what the news release says. Now on the daily, what we see here is that price is finding it difficult to move, but the order flow here is absolutely clean. This is something I want you guys to take note of. You can see a very clean market structure right here. A very, very clean market structure. This is absolutely clean, but it doesn't mean it's going to continue. It doesn't mean it's going to continue, but I just love the fact that we have a clean structure. So if we see price starts to break below these areas and moving towards the downside, you could take trades and aim for these zones, the 7-8 zones, the 7-7 zones, 7-6 areas. Clearly, we don't even need extra eyeballs to see that structure of market showing up here. Now let's see. That means we don't have a clear view when it comes to the US dollar Swiss franc, even though it had one of the quite clear view on the fundamental stance. It doesn't have a very clear view technically. So I'll call this neutral. To me, I'll call it a neutral stance, because I need price to actually perform something before I would see it as useful. What do I need price to really perform? What I need price to either find its way above this zone, that is break upwards, or if it goes down and then shows me a clear sign of another good change of structure, then I can trade it for this upside, because it has already mitigated the zone. That's just it. It's already mitigated the zone. That's the fact. But how it's going to continue to deliver to that upside is what I don't know. So for me, that is neutral. Heading into the next pair, we have the US dollar against the Japanese yen. Now what we have here, we have price pushing for the downside overall. This is literally bearish overall. While for the recent 14 days, it's coming into the neutral zone. And then for the key comparison is actually neutral, slightly bullish. That's like a very confusing situation. So in my opinion, I'll call that a neutral stance, like a very, very neutral stance in my opinion. Let's see what it has for us on the chart. Heading down to the monthly. Now on the monthly, what we see here is exactly what I just suspected. There's no clear direction. Even though I have, like, you can see, how do I even start to explain this stuff? Let's do it like this. We have a fair value gap, right? A bullish imbalance right here, fair value gap. And one thing you see after this bullish imbalance is that price has mitigated and done the best of its job, which is taking us away to this high. However, price is finding it difficult to go to this point, unless we see like this week suddenly rally on top, or like maybe this week, next week push on top. It's finding it difficult to find its way to the 161.94 levels. It's finding it quite difficult. And mind you, this is a zone where the BOJ is known to constantly come into price situation. Constantly. They've done it before right here in 2024. They did it again in 2025. But back in these zones in 2026, anything can happen at this zone. So to me, I don't see this as a tradable market just by looking at the monthly already. But heading into the weekly, even at that, we have a target. We still have a target. We won't remove the target from the situation. This is the monthly target. Heading into the weekly, what we have here is, again, very similar situation. You can see how price showed strength when breaking above this zone. Showed strength, but it is not seeing that strength continue strongly to the upside, even though we are seeing rejections on the downside here. These are good rejections, but you can see the last week candle, it went up and it's most likely coming down already. And let's put that into the daily perspective. What we see here is, so we have a zone, we have a good zone. Now this is what I want to see on the daily. So I have two zones right here, very, very close to each other. We have a daily supply zone and we have a daily demand zone right here. We have a daily demand zone right here. And what this all means is simple. We need price to break one of these zones instantly, as soon as possible. It breaks above, we expect more bullish move if it breaks above. But if it fails to break above and then it breaks below, we expect more bearish move. So we are caught at the best place price can be and the best thing price can do. Price just needs to tell us what direction it's taking. Is it going up? Is it going down? We've seen it's very similar scenario. We saw it right here where price gave us that break, and then what happened next? It fell. It fell massively. We've seen that same situation again here. You can see price move here and gained strength to move even higher before it's capitulated entirely. So to me, this is like a neutral stance technically. There's nothing to literally look forward to on this chart. Nothing to look forward to. Now, I've gone quite far. We spent a long time looking at just the majors. Imagine what's going to happen if we start looking at the minor pairs. There are about 21 of them. So we're going to just do it a little bit faster than normal, right? Like I said, I was going to speed up the thing so that we would just be able to see it. We spent a long time already. Well, at the end of the day, we're going to be looking at this table and we're going to look at the ones that have very clear direction, both fundamentally and technically. And those are the markets we're going to be looking out for the most this week as our week market. So I'm going to just save this right up here and we'll be able to look at it next week. So I've saved the file and I named it by date, month, year, weekly forecast. Now let's head into the minor pairs and we're going to be quite quick with it, just trying to meet up with time so as not to waste anybody's time. It's going to be a long review. Heading into the very first one, we have for ourselves the AUDUSD. Now we're going to be looking at the Australian dollar base markets where the Australian dollar is the base, and we're going to start all of that by switching into the minor pairs and heading straight into Australian dollar. Now the Australian dollar, Canadian dollar, we can see this is where deviation starts to show the most, right? This is where deviation starts to show the most. We have the fundamental news, the overall saying neutral. We have the 14 days saying bearish. The recent 14 days news are saying bearish, and the key news is saying heading towards the bullish direction. Okay, so now let's head into the Australian dollar against the Canadian dollar. We have the overall news saying quite neutral. The 14 days saying is bearish, while the key comparison saying it's heading towards the bullish direction, which is confusion as they speak. And when I see confusion like this, I have one thing for it. I just call it neutral because it doesn't have like a very clear one directional motive. Let's head into the trading view. Putting that by the wayside, we're gonna head straight into the Australian dollar, Canadian dollar, and start on the monthly. Now on the monthly, I see strong, like literally strong strength. You can see it right here. We have the good this is a bullish imbalance right here. Seeing price heading for zones like the prices like the 0.9999 areas. We have price heading also for price like 0.989 areas. However, when we see such move, we expect to see a little bit of correction before we see a move to the upside. And let's see what the weekly is saying about this. Now, the weekly is saying there's the correction has technically started. As you can see there are wicks above on the chart. That is what the weekly is currently saying. The correction has most likely started to find its way to the downside. Now, going back to the monthly, don't forget we have a demand zone right here. This is a very good demand zone. Oh, this was supposed to be an imbalance, and this is my monthly demand zone. Now on the weekly, we see price most likely heading down towards what? Towards the imbalance, or towards the situation, towards the demand. So the target price for the monthly, for the weekly, is quite bearish, right? The 0.946 areas. So heading into the daily, just to determine what is the most likely direction, we see that price has recently rejected this entire move up, and the last day we also saw rejection from the downside. However, the same price still look like it's heading more for the downside than it is for the upside, which is most likely going to bring price down to a target level of 0.95 area. Now we can't tell what direction price is most likely going to take, right? If we go into the 1 hour, and why am I diving into the 1 hour? In case you've forgotten, I'm seeing right here a bullish imbalance on the daily, which price seemed to have respected some days ago. That was on Thursday. And if you dive into the 1 hour to see what's happening, we can see price is finding it difficult to stay above the necessary areas. This is the necessary area price needs to literally close above, and you can see price is not closing above this area. So there's a high tendency price is, like I said, heading for this downside on the daily. There's a high tendency is heading for here for the downside on the daily. So in my opinion, this market is more bearish than normal. You can see that is my opinion for the Australian dollar for the week. It was most likely going to be seeing bearish move against for the AUDCAD. Moving on to the next market, we have the AUD Swiss franc, which is right here. And fundamentally, right, overall comparison is currently at 48%, basically neutral. The 14 days news has slid it into the negative zone, and then the key news is quite neutral. So I'd say slightly, when I say slightly, I mean absolutely slightly bearish. It's not really bearish, it's just, you know, edging towards the bearish side slowly. Now let's see what we have to see on the chart to determine our direction. Now on the monthly, we've been seeing slow grind to the upside, slow grind to the upside, slow grind to the upside. However, when we see slow movements like this and we end up seeing such a very obvious wick at the top, there is only one thing that's coming to my mind. The monthly is more like in a neutral zone. To me, it's more of a neutral zone. Unless we see price go down immediately, we are still slightly moving upwards. So this is quite neutral to me on the monthly. I can't even see fresh targets to me. I can't say target, and the only way I can determine the target of the monthly is by looking at the weekly, and I'm seeing that the recent weeks we see price pushing downwards. So I can say that my monthly expectation is the 0.5394 areas. Price, again, these are expectations. Price are not going to just run into my direction, right? These are areas I'm looking like, okay, price is most likely going to go to this downside than it is going to go to the upside. Now on the weekly, what do we see? You can only determine the weekly by looking at the daily. So again, now the weekly, we notice price rejecting this upside, and here we can begin to see why that is happening. You can see that we have right here a weekly supply zone, and a very, very, very obvious one at that. I said very 3 times, so it's a very obvious one at that. There's a high tendency. Price is not lying to us. Price is most likely going to be coming down towards this weekly area, in my opinion. In as much as price printed a bullish move last week, it's quite difficult for me to see price pushing for this upside. Matter of fact, price could push for this upside, but let's see on the daily. Let's look at what's happening on the daily. Okay, so as you can see on the daily, what are we seeing? The last day ended with price moving upwards and seemingly trying to find its way downwards. So on the daily, what I have here is what I have right here. Price coming towards the downside. In my opinion, these are what I see. And mind you, as you can see, this is also a supply area. It's a slight, not really good one. This is not a good supply zone. You can see I have weak ones and strong ones. So weak supply zone. This is like a weak daily supply zone. Not so strong. Price may or may not, may accept or may reject it. And also don't forget, you can see price is most likely heading to the downside. Why am I changing my mind all of a sudden? You can see that we have daily bullish imbalance right here, which price has mitigated, but price fails to continue to the upside. Instead, it comes down to take away the mitigation and is beginning to edge downwards. So in my opinion, this market is actually bearish. You see, your views can change almost instantaneously. This market is most likely bearish. If it's coming up, it's only coming for this area and most likely going to capitulate. So I have a bearish expectation on this market going forward. That's it for the Australian dollar card. Then we have the AUD Japanese yen. So the Australian dollar Japanese yen, I don't even need to look too much. This market is actually a bearish market to me. It's a clearly bearish market to me. Clearly. Very bearish for that matter. in my opinion. Why? Well, I can see that the overall is below 40. The 14 days is below 40, and the key comparison is at 40. So I have a bearish stance right in front of me just by looking at the markets, the economic data releases. Putting that into play, let's look at what the market has to say. Whoa, we had strong upward trend, and then market killed it right at the top. The very last month ended with serious hit. So we have a monthly aim for 106.849. we have a weekly view. As you can see, the weekly is already giving me a week. I'm already seeing a weekly supply zone. Not really a strong one yet. The end of this week will determine if this weekly supply zone is going to stand as a very good weekly supply zone. But with the week upwards, I expect price to come to the upside on the weekly, right? With this week, I'm expecting price to most likely come back to the upside for a retest and then go down. On the daily, what I expect to see the most, well, this is where it gets tricky. The daily is showing me signs of weakness as its last move, even though I have 3 rejections here. So just like the weekly, I think the daily is heading towards the upside more. It's heading towards the upside more like heading towards the side to pick up liquidity. There may be liquidity here for it to here or here to come back and then finally push to the downside. It could be any of them, but overall I see a bearish market overall. Is it bearish for me in the week? Oh, on the week, I actually expect it to come back up a little bit. So I think I'll just name it slightly bullish market. I say slightly bullish market. That's what we'll call it. Let's move on to Australian dollar against the New Zealand dollar. Now, this is where it goes absolutely berserk, because the New Zealand dollar had a terrible 14 days in the last 14 days. So I think it's most likely a win for the Australian dollar. Sorry, the New Zealand dollar had a terrible week. Reference 14 days. But the key economic data is saying something else. The key economic data is saying I should be very careful because it's closer to the bearish side than it is to the bullish side. So let's see what the chart has to say about all of this. We're heading straight to the NZD, and whoa, this has been ripping hard. You can see right there, push to the upside, major push to the upside. Matter of fact, I don't even know where this chart is heading to anymore. We could say price is really pushing towards the side on the monthly, right? On the monthly, price has every tendency to want to sit down up there. What do we see on the weekly? Well, wow, we had a strong ending week, a very strong ending week. All I'm seeing here is price actually moving for the upside even more to the 1.2148 levels. And that brings us to the daily. Matter of fact, I think for a fact we're most likely bullish on this chart. Why? So I have a bullish imbalance right here, very tiny imbalance. We see price reverting after coming into that area, touching into the demand areas of that price. You can see this is the demand area of price. This is the demand zones of the price, and we can clearly see, if I put a Fibonacci from the low to the high and I dove into the 4 hours, I will see crazy buying below the 50%. You can see right there, I have crazy buying below the 50% line. So just like I said, the daily has every clear tendency to head towards the weekly expectation. So this chart for me this week is most likely bullish, unless we find difficulty moving above this supply zone. This is a daily supply zone. As you can see, if there are difficulties to move above this zone, then we may see price suddenly capitulate to the downside, but it doesn't even have any show of bearish move. For it to be bearish, for this chart to really become bearish, it needs to break below these zones. It needs to start breaking below areas like this, areas like this, areas like this. For this chart to start showing us bearish move, it has to break through these three areas, and then we'll believe that this chart is beginning to have like strong bearish stance or bearish situations. But right now, there's every tendency for more bullish upside moves on this chart. Moving on to the next market, we have the Canadian market. Oh, we finally finished the Australian market. So we have the Canadian markets. We have CAD, Swiss franc. And fundamentally, what we have here is the overall situation is neutral. The 14 days comparison is more in the bullish side, heading towards the bullish. And then the key information is quite bearish. So what we have here is a neutral stance. In my opinion, what I have here is a neutral stance. It's not clear. It's not even clear. It's not clearly bullish. That's what I see here. Let's head into the chart and see what it says. On the monthly, what we have here is, that is harsh. That is harsh. Well, we've seen a small rejection to the downside, or to the upside, but we have clearly right here, we have a monthly supply zone, making it difficult for this month to survive. If this month could push above it, then we'll start to see that a bullish situation is possibly coming up on this market. But this market has been so bearish for so long. It's going to be a tough fight to buy in this market. But let's still continue our analysis. We have the weekly stance. Well, the weekly stance, oh, I forgot to aim for what the monthly aim is. The monthly target is actually the upside here. This is the monthly target. The weekly target is similar. Actually, the weekly target is actually very similar. We have a bullish imbalance right here, right? This is a bullish imbalance right here. This is for the weekly. And we see price respected it last week. Let's go check out the 4 hours and see if that respect is really good. The respect is actually showing signs of strength. But again, just like many other charts we've seen, the respect is finding it difficult to break above. It's finding it difficult to break above the clear zone that is right here. This is a clear supply zone that price really needs to break above for us to see that this market is becoming a strong tendency to target for this upside. If it doesn't break above here, I don't see a reason to buy. I see more reasons to even sell. Meaning, what do I mean? It means that this monthly supply zone is just too strong for the markets to push upwards. That's it. If the market finds it difficult to move upwards. Now, on the 4 hours, I see one thing, but it's invalidated already. I would have said this was a QMR zone, but it has been invalidated. As you can see, when price did this pullback, it went into the only and one and only zone we had viable for a QMR. That is a bearish reversal. It already mitigated it, so it doesn't have a clear move for the QMR or QMC in this place. We don't even have that chance at all in this place yet. We just need to see price do something. Basically, I need to see price do something. To me, this is neutral to the it's just neutral. It's neutral to me. That's what I'm seeing here. I need this market to move in one clear direction. Right? I need to move in one clear direction. Break above this on the 4 hours, or I can't be buying in this market. If it doesn't break above this, I can't be buying in this market. If you go up to the daily, it means I am saying price should tear above this level, which is the 0.5762 levels. If price cannot tear above this level, I don't see a reason for me to be buying into this market. As a matter of fact, I see a reason to not do anything, not even do anything. I won't sell either. I will only sell if price starts to find its way below this level. So if price starts to find its way below the 0.5693 levels, then I can sell. I can say, okay, let's sell this market, hoping for price to find its way towards the demand zone right here, the 0.564 levels. Moving on to the next chart, we have the CADJPY, and fundamentally, this is clearly a bearish market. Fundamentally, we see the overall at the 40%. We see the last 14 days at 45%, which is slight neutral, heading towards the bearish direction. And we have the key comparison saying just sell, aim for go for the Japanese yen, right? So let's see what this chart has to say to us. CAD Japanese yen. And what we have here is we can clearly see monthly weakness at the top, strong show of weakness. And it's not just any kind of weakness, it's a weakness that is being shown inside a monthly supply area. So what we have here is a strong monthly supply zone, seemingly looking like it is carrying out its toll on this market. Now on the weekly, what does this mean for the target of the monthly? Well, right now the monthly is confused. It has no clear target. If I see price starts to close below areas like this, right? If see price starts to close below areas like this on the monthly, right? Then we can say price is heading for this downside right here, but price is not doing anything yet. Price is kind of consolidated within this area, so I won't take a stance on the monthly. But on the weekly, however, we see exactly what I was expecting from the other market, where I said this is when I will start to go short, right? We have a bullish imbalance right here on the weekly. This is it. This is the weekly imbalance, which was initially respected. Initially it was respected right here. However, if you go down to the 4 hours to look at that respect, you'll see it right here. You can see that price really did do a strong respect. However, price failed to break above the supply zone it needs to do to break above to show signs of power move, which is exactly what I'm saying about the other chart. If I don't see this, if I see something like this happening, it's not breaking above it and beginning to show weakness. My weekly target for this market is clearly the downside. I'm clearly aiming for the demand zones, which unsurprisingly, price has already met with, right? This is it. See, price is extremely close to that demand zone. Oh, it hasn't even met. So for me, the weekly target for this market is actually the bearish side. This is the areas I expect price to start aiming for. Areas like this, 112.68 levels. So I have a bearish stance on this market. Ooh, I wish I could take images like shots and keep them all in this place, but I can't. Let's move on to the next market. We have the Swiss franc against the Japanese yen. This is the Swiss franc against the Japanese yen, and it's also a bearish stance fundamentally. How is it bearish? Well, the overall news says it's below 40%. That's signs of weakness. The 14 days news release has all stated below signs of weakness, and as well as the key news is neutral, heading towards the weak end of the spectrum. So let's move on to the next chart, Swiss franc against Japanese yen, and we can clearly see, I don't even need to stress much, but what I see here is a monthly situation where price is finding its close below the opening price of the previous month, right? It's closing below, but it has not yet closed below the entire range of the month. So first target first monthly target is the entire range of 2 months ago. That is the entire range of February, the 197.64 levels. On the weekly, we can see price literally did something funny. It came down and wicked back above, kind of rejecting the areas, but I see more tendencies to continue downwards this week. So to finalize, or rather determine if that is correct, we have to go down to daily and possibly to the 4 hours. And nothing beats seeing this happen on your charts. Basically, you can see, we can see this. I don't even need anybody to speak language to me anymore at this point. This is a Choch and also a Quasimodo reversal. If you go down to the 4 hours, I'm having the glorious day of my life. I have a clear Quasimodo reversal sitting down right here. Just a bearish POI for me. Just clearly bearish. If price should make the mistake of coming back up here, it's a selling game for me. Like a selling game. This place is a protected zone. This place is my protected zone. This is my structural liquidity. Where is it? This right here is my structural liquidity. And I don't know, this is how I look at the chart, right? This is how I personally see the chart. I don't know if I'm correct. The DAX brand can actually try and correct me here. He's the master of things like this. This is also coming from the fact that you can see that the fundamental is screaming it. And guess what? This is literally tied to a higher time frame of a good demand zone, which price failed to properly close above it. Sorry, I'm not giving it a clear area. Sorry, supply zone actually. So it's coming from a clear supply zone, which price failed to properly break through. And now we're seeing price capitulate hard. And it has a long way to go down, like a very, very long way to go down if price can no longer continue holding this strength up. However, fundamental can change anything. The fundamental could start coming up tomorrow, and what's going to happen is price is like going to eradicate all of this. It's possible. Price could do anything. But to me, this is where I stand for the Swiss francs against the Japanese yen. On the weekly though, not forgetting the original target, I see a tendency of price kind of pulling back to the upside, right? Pulling back towards the upside. So it's more like a bullish week to end up becoming bearish later, like either this week, during the week, or maybe next week or upper week. But there's a slight show of bullish move coming up. Actually, scrap that. There's more tendency for a bearish move. I'm just looking at the daily right now and I'm seeing more tendency for a bearish move. So therefore, on the 4 hours, I'm expecting the weekly to just capitulate down to exactly the same zone where the monthly is looking out for. This is what I'm expecting the weekly to do. So to me, it's a bearish market. It's a bearish market. That's what it is to me. So moving on to the next market, we have the euro against the Australian dollar, euro AUD. And what we see right here is this is clearly a bullish market. You can see a well-agreed stance across board. The overall comparison is saying neutral towards the bullish side. The last 14 days new release is saying bullish. The key comparison is saying bullish. So this market stands as a bullish market fundamentally. But let's see what the chart has to say about this. And moving on to this, we can see major rejection of what? Of a monthly demand zone. Major rejection of a monthly demand zone right here. Also, we have clear bearish imbalance right here. Oh, sorry, this is bearish. We have clear monthly bearish imbalance right here. So first and foremost, my expectation is for price to find its way back into these areas. This is my first expectation of price target. on the monthly. So on the monthly, I expect a bullish move going back towards that direction. On the weekly, well, on the weekly, we ended the week creating a bullish impulsive move. So that's a bullish fair value gap, a bullish, what is it called? Sorry, bullish, what am I doing? Bullish imbalance. Yeah. So we ended the week creating the bullish imbalance, and we could see price walk into this place and figure out strength to start to push towards upside. So on the weekly, we kind of have very similar targets. So in my opinion, this is like a bullish move. There's more tendency for a bullish week or even a doji week. This week may end up being a doji. So that's it. We move on to the next market. We have the euro against the Canadian dollar. And what is my verdict for this fundamental stance right now? We're moving into the euro space. Now, the euro space, we have the slightly bullish area on the overall data. The 14 days says the data is it's not as good as it used to be, moving towards the bearish side. But the recent key news are strongly bullish. So in my opinion, I would say this market is actually in the bullish spectrum for fundamental stance. Let's see what the technical chart has to say about this. We have right here extreme rejection on the monthly, and this brings us to areas of targets such as the other month high, which is 1.6202, and furthermore even the other months, which is 1.63925. On the weekly, we can see price is severely mitigating its way through the supply zone of a weekly supply zone. And in my opinion, with this amount of rejection, I will peacefully call this a neutral market. This is a market I will not be trading anytime soon. Why? Because I'm already seeing clear signs that there is going to be a slight confusion around here for a while being. Let's just look at it on the daily to see what's looking like. On the daily, we have a bullish imbalance right here that looks like it's respected on day 1 and then getting slightly disrespected on day 2. Why? Because if I go down to the day 1 hour to see what happened, similar situations where price is finding it difficult to break above those supply areas that led to the sharp turn. So in my opinion, this market has a tendency to find its way to the downside first, then it has a tendency to find its way above this weekly supply zone. It has more tendency to find its way down here, which, as you can see already, it looks like it's already heading for a bearish move. I won't change it. I will just leave it as neutral. This is a market I do not even want to be involved in. Or even if I change it to bearish, I will not be involved in it simply because it is already not showing me one direction. Let's move on to the next one. We have for ourselves the euro against the Swiss franc. Now, the euro against the Swiss franc, we have a bullish overall data. We have a slightly bullish, not really bullish. Actually, the other one was neutral. The overall data was neutral towards the bullish side. 14 days was also neutral towards the bullish side. And then the key comparison is where we have a bullish stance. So we have a slightly bullish stance in this market. Slightly bullish, in my opinion. Now let's see what this looks like on the chart. Swiss franc, we're heading to the monthly. And we're kind of in a messy position. Why do I say in a messy position? Well, you can clearly see that this is a supply zone, and not just any kind of supply zone, a good one. Not so good, but it's a monthly supply zone, and we are not seeing price move away from it. Instead, we're seeing price just about to enter it and still going through the rough patch of fights to do it. Let's see what happens on the weekly. Well, on the weekly, we did see, we're seeing similar situation. I think we're already seeing similar situation right here. This is a weekly supply zone, literally hanging inside the monthly zone, waiting for hell to unleash itself. And we can see major rejections here already in the last week. heading into the daily to see what that rejection is all about, we have this situation where price starts to literally dance, and in my opinion, I don't even want to go any further because this chart is already screaming neutrality at its best, as its best performance ever. Finding it difficult to push even further, dancing around here. Oh, we could see anything happen, but this market is already a neutral market on the stance of the entire situation. Moving on, we have the euro against the British pound. Now, this is one pair that personally is a pair that has been a total mean reversion pair. It is always going up and down around a certain price area. But let's see what it's saying. Overall comparison is leaning towards the bearish side. It is neutral towards the bearish. 14 days is neutral towards the bearish. The comparison is neutral, not just any kind of movements. Basically, this is a neutral market to just look at. Now, on the charts, this is where it becomes tricky. On the monthly, like I said, take a good look at this pair. You see what I said? It's been dancing around the price area for so long. This is all the way since 2016. September of 2016. It's just been dancing around this place. But however, all of that by the wayside, let's look at what we're here to do. We have price giving us a strong sign of movement. Let's just confirm if this was a good week or not. Let's see. Okay, what we have is, oh, I'm forgetting something. Let's get the detail showing up. I don't extend. I want to see the change in pips. Okay, so price did wick down below the last week, and then it couldn't close above. It's found its way towards the downside. This price is most likely heading towards the downside. Most likely heading towards the downside on the monthly. So from just the candle science here, what we see is a monthly target of most likely the downside. On the weekly, what I have here is, price is fighting strongly against a weekly supply zone, and price is beginning to enter the zone. Anything can happen around here. Anything can happen around here at all. Let's head into the daily. On the daily, we see price kind of moving towards the upside. Basically, it's kind of respecting to move towards the upside. We have this bullish imbalance right here, and price is respecting that. That is absolutely outstanding. I've not seen that in a long time. And what I see here is, wow, this is the first time you can see we literally beat the supply zone for the first time, and beating that supply zone says there is a higher tendency to head more towards the upside than the downside. However, this right here is not an interesting look right here at all. It's not an interesting look. So on the weekly, I would say starting from the daily, let's grow out of the whole thing, right? Let's grow out of the whole thing. So from the 1 hour, we're most likely heading towards this direction. Right, this is the 1 hour. If the 1 hour is heading towards this direction, what is the 4 hours doing? Similar direction. The daily actually shows us the sign. Weakness at the top, price coming towards the downside. Hence, you can see that our weekly summary says we're heading towards the upside of this situation. Actually, we're heading, that means it's a bearish week. It's most likely going to be a bearish week for the market, most likely. So we're heading back towards the demand zone here. However, there's something I like to do when it comes to the euro against the British pound, and it's the mean reversion strategy. This is a strategy that, to me, is by far the most valuable strategy you ever trade on the euro against the US, the euro against the pound, right? As of now, not that it's the best. As of now, simply because we've seen severe consolidation in recent times. So on the 4 hours and on the daily is where I would like to use this. And what I can see right here is that I can't come into a selling market here. This is like a literal sell zone for me as it is. So for me, I think this is a bearish market that I will love to stand bearish against at this point. At this point is most likely something I would love to stay bearish against, because clearly we see price coming back into the Bollinger Band area. So we're heading for the midpoint of the Bollinger Band deviations. So this is to me a very bearish market. Let's add up into the euro against the Japanese yen, and I think this is not the last euro we have, but what we have on the fundamental space here is neutral. And the 14 days we have bearish move. It is down below the 40%, and on the key news it is quite bullish. So this is another neutral stance when it comes to fundamental environments. But let's see what the chart has to say for us. Right, the chart on the Japanese yen against the euro, or rather the euro against the Japanese yen, is we see months of strong move towards the upside, but we're now jamming some sort of consolidation, and price is finding it difficult to continue its move. Matter of fact, it's been going up and down, up and down, up and down within this range. So I'm just going to put a very good range band to it. Let me just use a parallel situation to it. So I'll put a parallel situation. This is far more befitting of what I see in price right now. So yeah, this is it. So I have a parallel zone, price diving within that zone just to give us constant Bollinger Band movements. So this is also another time when Bollinger Band on the lower time frame would serve you right until the market starts to trend in one direction again. So the Bollinger Band mean reversion strategies working fine in this market. Now, as I can see here, there is no clear monthly target. There is no clear weekly target. Matter of fact, you can see the week down here seems like it's pushing for the upside. But what's the upside? The upside here, the closest upside here is right here. It's not so far away. The best upside towards it is here and here, which is also not so far away. They are like they're about almost 100 pips away, but not so far away. On the daily, what we have here is we see price just dancing within the area. Like I said, this is the best time to call up your Bollinger Band situation, and you'd see how this market has been faring against the Bollinger Band on time frames like the 1 hour or 4 hours. Let's just review the short time we have here. You can see if you've been using the Bollinger Band since the inception of this range, right? Since the inception of this range, you would have made a lot of profit. Let's start with this one. You hit stop loss here, you hit the stop loss here. You enter long, profit 1, you short, profit 2, you come in here, this is another long right here, price has closed below, profit 3, you short here, you hit stop loss, that's down to 2, stops, you've been stopped out again, down to 1, stopped out again, and then you short for another profit. This is it, you just stopped out here, long, you hold the long, you come out here, almost break even. You short here, came out profitable. You short here, you lost the trade. You short here again, you won the next trade. You long, you won that next trade. You can see that you're winning more than you're losing in this place in just this how many months of time where price has constantly danced around in one spectrum. And that's the good thing with the Bollinger Band mean reversion strategy. It allows you be able to trade price when price keeps playing within a certain range. And in my opinion, I don't see anything to trade here naturally when it comes to the 4 hours chart. It's messy. It's a chart that I do not even want to be involved in. I'm just going to have to erase these target zones, and I think I will even put up an anchor in this place, BB trade for now. Basically Bollinger Band trades for now in this market. Let's move on to the next best thing we have here. We have the euro against the New Zealand dollar. That is EURNZD. Oh, I said NZF. This is NZD. And what we have here is Superb. It's a bullish market. It's a bullish stance. Clearly a bullish stance. You didn't even need to ask twice. You can see 55%. It's neutral towards the bullish side, but the overall stance is, again, the New Zealand dollar has a problem in the recent 14 days. And then the key comparison is saying slightly bullish. However, all this all amounts to a bullish market. Fundamentally, let's head into the chart, and what I can see here is, I'm seeing knives. I'm seeing knives. Oh, that's on the 1 hour. Yeah, you can see. So on the monthly, what do I see? I see price currently mitigating a supply zone, a monthly supply zone for that matter, and a very clear one. However, what do I see again is price has been moving more towards the upside recently, invalidating supply zones one after the other, killing it here, kill it here, killed it here, may most likely kill it again. And then what does that mean for me? There's a higher tendency for an upside, especially with the fact that I have fundamentals saying more for the upside. Don't forget, fundamental bias is very real. At the same time, we're most likely creating a fair value gap or an imbalance here, but the month is not over, so we can't call it an imbalance. But here what we see is we have price coming out of a weekly supply demand area, now pushing with strong new demand zones within it. You can see that it is literally, it's showing us every sign it needs to show us that its strength is there for it to move upward. It has the strength to move upwards. And take a good look at this. We have a supply zone right here, which price is most likely going to rip apart. Most likely. As you can see, the wick above the candle is very small. The wick is very small. That wick is very tiny compared to the body of the candle. So there's a higher tendency we are going to most likely see price push even to the higher upside on the weekly. So 2.0439 is where I expect price to move. This to me is a bullish market. So what am I really going to be looking out for? Well, I'm looking to see if price is going to retrace at all. Price is going to retrace towards the bullish imbalance, or this is it, my bullish imbalance, or the zones it has here. On the daily, it doesn't have like clear daily zones. As you can see, it's not even giving us that daily chance. Every day it somehow pushes even higher. Every day it somehow pushes even higher. So if we are going to see reversals at all, we're going to see reversals towards this side, towards the weekly demand, to further more skyrockets to the upside. Now, it's in a market like this I love to look for Quasimodo reversals, right? It's a market like this I like to look for Quasimodo reversals, and I like to do that on the 4 hours and on the 1 hour. So on the 4 hours, I can already see a very, very strong case for me, right? I can see a very strong case for me. This is the lowest point before the price move up. I have this, and then this one, and then this, and as you can see, I have for myself a good 4 hours Quasimodo stance. This is what do I mean by a Quasimodo stance? I mean, if price should in any way mistakenly find its way towards this downside and comes here, I'm still going to be buying. Now, I'm not buying all the way to the upside. I'm buying for a 2.5 risk to reward ratio, just below this area. Price aiming for this levels. However, this is not going to wait for me, right? It's just a zone I'm looking at and saying this is where I will most likely see buying chances if price should push its way downward. However, if that's going to happen, I pray it happens real quick rather than price making its way up here. Why? Because if I pull up a fib from here to this low, right, I'm seeing that price is already going into the very premium areas. And if price should find its way into the very premium areas, then this is no longer valid for me to utilize at all. So that's just the way I see it. I've seen three different things. I'm seeing price, if price comes back to the imbalance and shows me signs of returning for the upside, I will take a buy. If it shows me movement inside the weekly demand zone, I'll take a buy. If it shows me that it's coming down here, I'm going to take a buy for a 2.5 risk to reward ratio. Now, moving on to the next market, we have the British pound market, the British pound markets, the GPBs against many other assets. So we have British pound against the Australian dollar for a start, and this is the first market where it is when it comes to the bullish side, right, where the entire chart is in unison. We have 60% on the overall, that is bullish. We have the 67% on the overall on the 14 days, which is also bullish, and the overall key data is 63%, which is also bullish. So right here, this to me is the clearest bullish market I have seen. Clearest, right? Like extremely clear on the fundamental side. Now on the technical side, heading into the British pound against the Australian dollar, I saw the chart for the first time telling me, the fundamental telling me a clear sell, a clear buy. However, I am beginning to see the opposite when I open the chart, right? I'm seeing price literally capitulating hard, like it is literally falling hard against what the fundamental is saying. Now, this does not mean the fundamental is pointless. Like I said, the technical chart can have a totally different view from what the fundamental chart is saying. That is a market you should just stay away from for the while being until the technical starts to align with the fundamental situation. But let's take a good look at it again. On the monthly, I have this strong wick at the bottom, strong wick at the top, meaning price is kind of consolidated in the center, kind of confused. It means two things. It could mean that price has met a level where it is consolidating and it's not moving any stronger, or it also means that the markets may just actually start to flip, meaning this is the point where it's actually started to flip. So on the monthly, I don't have any direction on the monthly. Even though I had strong bearish move recently, I don't have any clear direction on the monthly here. Now on the weekly, I can see one thing. You can see exactly what we expected. 2 weeks ago, we had a strong bullish week. Last week, we had a bearish week. But the week ended with a good imbalance showing up here. We have a clear imbalance right here, a bullish imbalance on the weekly, meaning there is a higher tendency for price to fall down into any of these demand zones. As you can see, this is a demand zone right now on the weekly. It could fall into any of all these areas and most likely find strength. So on this week, what we may be looking for is a sharp turn on the 4 hours. So this is what we may be looking for this week on this chart. This is the first chart I'm actually telling you, look for something like this, right? I'm not saying you should do it. I'm just saying this is what I'm looking out for on the chart, right? So I'm looking for a possibility of a sharp turn on the 4 hours here, especially with the fact that price is clearly breaking out of areas where it was supposed to meet rejection. You can see how it's clearly broke out of this area, comes back for the retest. Most likely is going to do something like this when it finds that strength, most likely, especially with the fundamental, except if we get news releases saying otherwise. So what do I expect from price this week? I expect price to find its way into the imbalance or down to the demand zone and maybe find a way back towards the upside. So this is me being quite biased based on fundamentals saying bullish, but this is a slightly bullish market in my opinion, slightly bullish in terms of technical stance. Moving on to the British pound against the Canadian dollar, we have a fundamental situation where we have neutral towards the bullish stance on the overall data. The 14 days release says is more on the literal neutral side, while the key comparisons say it is bullish. It is a strong buying market. Let's see what the technical says. Well, the technical is kind of falling in line. Yep, that is a strong indication. We have similar situation with the British pound against the Australian dollar. However, this is far more convincing. It is clearly rejecting lower prices. So I can say, in my opinion, right, I can say everything below here is already a demand area when it comes to the monthly. Everything below here is basically a demand area. You can see how price constantly rejects when it comes back here. You can see how price constantly rejects when it comes back here. So let's see what the weekly has to say. If this is the monthly demand area, we have a weekly zone where the last week ended up in a doji. There was confusion. It moved up, moved down, came back to the center. Not a clear move. Not a clear move. We don't have like a clear weekly direction. So on the weekly, I'll say it's quite neutral. But let's confirm that looking at the daily and the 4 hours. On the daily, we have small consolidation here. This is a very good 15 minutes Bollinger Band situation for anybody who wants to trade the Bollinger Band mean reversion strategy for now. So this is strong withholding of price within the zone. This is neutral to me on the weekly. This is what I expect this market to be. Neutral for now. Moving on to the next market, we have the British pound against the Swiss franc, and what we have here is clear greens. We have neutral towards the bullish on the overall data, neutral towards the bullish on the 14 days data, but slightly bullish on the key comparison data. So I'll call this another bullish market. I hope we have better charts this time compared to other ones we've been seeing. Well, on the monthly, what do we see? Well, on the monthly, we see one of those biggest tail signs that over a period of time, we may see price start to move towards the upside. And what is it? First and foremost, I see a supply zone, which to me is the ultimate target right now. Why do I say it's the ultimate target? Well, it's simple. If you look at this last 2 months, this is the opening range. We have the opening till the entirety of the range. This is the lowest part of the range. And we can see what happened is last month, you see what price did. Price found its way from below the entire range and closed well above the opening range of the previous month. So this month, I may be seeing price to come down and push even higher. It may come down and end up below, right? But within time, it may also it has a higher tendency to push up. So to me, I would call this monthly direction more to the upside towards the 1.079 areas. So let's put that as a monthly direction. On the weekly, if that is my thesis on the weekly, you can see the last week, 2 weeks ago, ended up strongly bullish. This last week ended up with a doji move, kind of like flatlined. Not sure of what directions to take, but let's see what the daily is saying. We have consolidation on the daily, major consolidation, and I think it's coming from the fact that we have a supply zone here on the daily. So personally, I would love to see price break above the supply zone before I start to take any trades in this market. So to me, this is a neutral market, a very neutral market. Let's move on to the British pound against the Japanese yen. The British pound against the Japanese yen. We have a overall neutral markets, 14 days neutral markets, and a key comparison close to the bullish side. This is basically a neutral market in my opinion, fundamentally. And technically, what do we have here? We'll go down to the monthly. We can see months of consolidation literally rearing its head. Oh, that was an error. Let's put this like this, and I like to actually have all the percentage show up. So we have about 3 months of consolidation ongoing here, but then again, we also have price respecting a bullish imbalance on the monthly. So we have a monthly bullish imbalance, which price seems to be respecting. And if price is respecting it, we're just going to skim down to the daily and see what's happening on the daily. We have seen this picture over and over again. Price is failing to break above. You can see that price is failing to break above the available supply areas in as much as it is printing movement. Matter of fact, to me, this market is actually bearish. Why do I say so? You can see clear market structure, order flow, right? You can see it right here. Price made a high, a low, a high, a low, fails to break above that high at this point, and now is breaking below its lows. So in my opinion, this market is literally coming more for this downside than it is doing any other thing. So this is a bearish market. This, my dear friends, is a bearish market. Technically it is a bearish market to me. This is how I am seeing the chart right now. And if I go down to the weekly to confirm this, you can see how the weekly ended up in strong bearish move. It's more of a bearish market to me than it is bullish, because it's respecting the weekly supply, the daily supply zone. That's actually, matter of fact, it's both the weekly and the daily supply zone altogether. So it's actually respecting this area to push for the downside. It doesn't even have a demand zone to pull out from. So it's just pointless. Let's move on to the next market. We have the British pound against the New Zealand dollar. Man, this is again another New Zealand dollar situation. The New Zealand dollar situation, we have overall data saying okay, bearish towards the bullish side. The 14 days is absolutely outstanding to the bullish side, while the key comparison says quite similar. So I'd say fundamentally we are bullish. What is the technical chart saying? And technical chart is saying, well, price seems to have given us a strong recent demand. Not strong completely yet. We don't have an imbalance, but we have a strong recent demand. Even though we have a strong weekly supply, a daily monthly supply. This is a strong monthly supply. Why am I writing this? So let's see. This is it. This is it. So we have a strong monthly supply. And if you look at the weekly, right? In the weekly, we are heading towards the supply zone on the weekly. But we are doing it with clear show of strength. This to me is a bullish market. Why? It's a bullish market. It's just obvious at this point. You can see the clear show of strength from the British pound, pushing even further as soon as it comes into a formal demand zone. You can see this is a demand zone. As soon as it comes into a formal demand zone, it finds more strength, creates another strong push, impulsive move, even gives it a bullish imbalance alongside that move on the weekly. It's clearly saying, I just want to rip above this zone. So to me, this is a bullish market heading towards the 2.345 areas. The 2.345 areas. This is on the weekly. And I don't even need to go back to the daily to see these opinions, right? I'm just going to sit down, wait for the markets to either do a small pullback towards the weekly fair value gaps, and then take a clear stance for a move towards the upside, or even entering into the weekly demand zones. So this is one of those markets where the fundamental fully supports the technical stance. That is what we have here. Moving on, we have the New Zealand dollar, the last sets of pairs, the last three. The New Zealand dollar against the CAD, we have the New Zealand dollar against the Swiss franc, and the New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen. And what we have here, starting from the Canadian dollar against the New Zealand dollar, we have a neutral market overall, a bearish market in the recent 14 days, and a strong bullish market in the key data releases. I'll call that a neutral market. Let's head for the Swiss franc, the New Zealand dollar against the Swiss franc. We have similar situation. I will also call that a neutral stance. And then we have the New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen. I will call this slightly bearish already. And it's clear, it's quite obvious what's happening right here. You don't even need to ask questions twice, right? You don't need to ask questions twice. So this is all about it fundamentally. Let's see what the chart is saying about these three markets real quick. We've literally spent, this is the longest video I have ever made for you guys, and it's because I was excited to talk about the market this much. So we have a demand zone which price is currently mitigating, right? We have a demand zone which price is currently mitigating on the monthly, but guess what? Price is doing this with a supply zone. Like, it literally created a strong backend for itself. So even if it comes back down, it's most likely is going to push away from it. So this puts us into the bearish area on the monthly. This pushes us into the bearish targets on the monthly. On the weekly, And we can see price is really serious about this business. You can see how it is tearing into this strong mitigation area. You can see how it's tearing into the weekly area with strength, leaving strong wicks behind. This is a clear show of imbalance right here, a clear show of move that price is strongly aiming to push lower. Even with everything we have here, you could see, oh, that was a mistake. You can see we have a clear supply zone on the weekly from price. So price is saying over and over again, most likely heading for this 0.786 levels, and this is a strong bearish move. This is the first strong bearish move I'm seeing. I've not had strong moves. I'm just seeing a clear one. This is just too clear. I don't even need to go down to the daily to see what's happening. I can see it already pushing its whole force into this move. Moving on to the Swiss franc against the New Zealand dollar. That is what we have here. And on the monthly, I can see no competition. No competition all the way till 0.4459. It's basically a no competition move. If there are zones there, it has literally eaten it out. And you can see how it continuously produces strong wicks to the downside, pushing out wicks, saying we can't move upwards. We're pushing out to the downside, even with demand zone right here. But this demand zone is now weak. Why? Because price has come in here before. Price came in here, it didn't see enough strength to really push up. It got immediately rejected, and now price is heading down is breathing down the neck. This is the second strong bearish market we are seeing right here. I don't even need to go down to the daily. You can see the strong wick and price moving downwards. Let's just go there just for justification cases. You can see exactly what I'm saying. A strong bearish move. Price could change anytime, any day. It could wake up tomorrow and change. Let's head to the last chart, the New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen. This is where it becomes extremely difficult, right? And let's see what's happening right here. We have a monthly demand zone right here, which price is currently mitigating. However, unlike the rest of them, you can see price is coming out of, it's not even coming out of yet. It hasn't even touched its strong supply area on the monthly. There is a monthly supply zone right above it, but it hasn't even touched it yet. But it's already showing us that sign of strength to the downside. Basically, it's just showing us that strength to the downside. Let's see what the weekly has to offer. The weekly chart is saying one thing is clear. Right, one thing is clear. I'm not seeing demand zones within this zone to hold price back. I'm not seeing demand zones around here either. I'm not even seeing demand zones all the way to this point. So basically, what we are seeing here is a tendency of a free run for price. That is what I'm seeing here, a tendency of a free run for price. And why do I say a tendency of a free run? Because right here, I can see a strong, and I mean a literally strong supply zone from the weekly. This is clear supply zone screaming at the top of its lung on the weekly. And if the next week comes to make a longer one, it means we have an imbalance where price can come back to even push further downwards. On the daily, we have a daily demand zone right here, but that zone has literally been violated already as of now. It has been violated once. Price may come back and then push even lower. So I have a strong bearish market right here. So it was a long video. We've had review of so many technical charts, so many fundamental states of the chart of the market, and what we have right here is absolutely amazing. And I'm going to keep this data for next week. We're going to review it next week and see what happens. Let's just see what happens, right? I'm more of a long-term trader. So when I say something to me is bearish, I'm not just talking about the coming week. I'm talking about over the next sets of weeks. This is most likely what I see them, the less probable, the most probable movements, or highest probability of movement price can make. That's what I'm saying right here. So that's my read for the week. And before I end it, I'm just going to show you guys the entire script. You can see all the way from the top to the bottom what fundamental is saying, what technical is saying. We can also add a column that says, I'm just going to insert one last column to the right, one last column to the right, and we're going to call it verdict. Why are we calling it verdict? I think I would put all of this into an Excel sheet that I will be importing into that that page, right? I'll be importing it into the dashboard also. Let's just put it all into an Excel sheet. Yeah, yep, that is perfect. That is perfect. And I'm going to call this table. Let's just call it a table, and we're going to name this table. What are we going to name this table now? We're going to name it today's date, right? Today's date, which is the fifth day of the 4th month of 2025. Or we'll just call it review, weekly underscore review. I'll call it weekly review, and I'll add one last thing to it, right? One last thing to it, which is going to be date, so that we can track it. So I'm going to insert it into the dashboard later in time as a separate page where we can always come back to review it. I'm going to put today's date right there and put it all the way down. Now, what's my verdict? I'm simply going to apply a formula so that it runs the verdict, right? So now we have score lines of negative to positive, and all I just do is I filter for dates. I filter largest to smallest, and I can see my best chance of trade right here is the US dollar against the Canadian dollar. So that is where I'll start my week mostly. Let's go to something like the US dollar against the Canadian dollar and look at my entire verdict for the week. This is where I have like best chance to trade, the best trading opportunity, if I should say, in my opinion. Yep. So over a period of time, I'm going to add this. I'm going to add this page to the dashboard. Every week, we're just going to, during the week or after the end of the week, we're just going to come back and look at, okay, what was last week's expectation? Has it changed? Is it moving any better and all that stuff? So what do we have? Anything above the 4 score, right? Anything above the 4 score is anything above the 3s to 4 scores are like strongly in one direction. As you can see, this is what we have, mostly in one direction. I think I'm going to remove the 3s so we have like very good amount of things to view. What we have here is we have a total of how many bullish? 6 bullish markets, right? And 5 bearish markets to look out for this week the most. It's not easy looking through all of this. It is absolutely amazing. By the next video, we should have all of this in the chart. So that's my read for the week, and it's not a signal, it's just predictions of looking at the chart, comparing it against what the fundamental news is saying. The fundamental could come out tomorrow and I can be completely wrong. Mind you, this is not financial advice. I'm not selling the signal here. I'm just giving you the opinion of what I am seeing based on what the chart is printing, alongside with my calculations of what the fundamental is saying.